Life is not a straight road. It's never easy, and sometimes it feels like there's nothing but darkness all around you. You're struggling, you're falling, and the only question echoing in your mind is, will I ever get through this? If you're going through tough times right now, I want you to remember one thing. This too shall pass. Every successful person you admire has gone through moments where they felt completely lost. They too have faced failures, pain, and setbacks. But the reason they made it to the top is simple. They never gave up. They kept going, no matter what. Think about it. If Thomas Edison had given up after failing 1,000 times, would we have the electric bulb today? If Colonel Sanders had quit after his chicken recipe was rejected 1,009 times, would KFC be a global success? The secret is simple. If you're going through tough times, the only way out is to push through. And this isn't just some cliche advice. This is reality. Struggles are a part of life. But what truly matters is how you respond to them. Will you let them break you? Or will you rise above them? You have no choice but to fight. You have no choice but to push through. Because the moment you decide to keep going, despite the pain, despite the fear, that's the moment you win. Life is a battlefield where everyone has to fight their own battles. Struggles, failures, heartbreaks, they're a part of the journey. But the real question is, how do you see these challenges? Many people break down when faced with difficulties. They start believing that life is unfair, that the world is against them. They blame fate, they blame circumstances, and worst of all, they start doubting themselves. But let me tell you a truth. Life is not easy for anyone. Even the most successful people you know have faced incredible hardships. The only thing that made them different was their ability to push through. Imagine someone lost in the middle of a storm, in complete darkness. If they stop moving, what will happen? They will stay lost forever. But if they take just one more step forward, what will happen? Eventually, they will find their way out. That's exactly how life works. No matter how painful or difficult things get, you must keep going. Whether it's heartbreak, failure, rejection, or loss, you must get through this. Because stopping is not an option. Giving up is not an option. Success only comes to those who turn their struggles into their strength. This isn't just motivation, it's a fact. Every great person, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling, has faced moments where they felt like everything was falling apart. But they had one thing in common. They refused to quit. They pushed through. So, if you're in a dark place right now, if you're feeling lost or hopeless, remember this: you must get through this. You don't have to win today. You don't have to be perfect. But you do have to keep going. Because the harder the battle, the greater the victory. Bethany Hamilton was a rising star in the world of surfing. From a young age, she had a deep passion for the ocean, and by the time she was 13, she was already competing at a professional level. She had dreams of becoming one of the best surfers in the world. But one morning in 2003, her life changed forever. Bethany was out surfing with her best friend when, out of nowhere, a 14-foot tiger shark attacked her. In just one swift bite, she lost her left arm. She was rushed to the hospital, barely alive, having lost over 60% of her blood. Doctors and people around her thought that this was the end of her surfing career. After all, how could a girl with just one arm continue to surf? Most people in her situation would have given up. They would have let fear and self-pity take over. But not Bethany. Just 1 month after the attack, Bethany was back in the water. Learning to surf with just one arm was unbelievably difficult. She struggled to balance, she fell over and over again, and every time she looked down at the water, she was reminded of what had happened to her. But she refused to stop. She refused to let this tragedy define her. Within a year, she was competing again. And not just competing, winning. She didn't just come back to surfing. She became one of the top female surfers in the world. Bethany's story is a reminder that no matter how bad things get, no matter how hopeless it feels, you must keep going. Life will throw storms at you, but you have the choice to either sink or swim. And those who refuse to sink, those who refuse to give up, are the ones who achieve greatness. So, the next time you feel like life is against you, the next time you feel like giving up, remember Bethany Hamilton. Your struggles do not define you. Your determination does. Chris Gardner's life was falling apart. He had no money, no home, and no stability. He was a struggling salesman, trying to make a better life for his son, but every day felt like a battle. One day, his bank account hit zero, and his wife, unable to take the financial pressure anymore, left him. Now, he was a single father with a young son, completely homeless. They had nowhere to sleep, so they spent nights in subway stations, public bathrooms, and shelters. Some nights, he had to hold his son close on a park bench, pretending everything was okay. Most people would have broken under this pressure. Most people would have given up. But not Chris Gardner. Despite all of this, Chris refused to let his situation define him. He saw his struggles as temporary, not permanent. He applied for an unpaid internship at a stock brokerage firm, competing with dozens of other candidates. He worked harder than anyone else, despite not having a home, despite being exhausted, despite having every reason to quit. And after months of struggle, he got the job. But he didn't just stop there. He worked his way up, becoming a top stockbroker, then starting his own multi-million-dollar company. Today, Chris Gardner is a self-made millionaire, a motivational speaker, and an inspiration to millions. His story was even turned into the famous movie The Pursuit of Happiness, starring Will Smith. Chris Gardner's story teaches us that your current situation is not your final destination. Life will test you. It will push you to your limits. But if you refuse to break, if you refuse to quit, you will rise above it. So whenever you feel like life is unfair, whenever you feel like you have nothing left, remember, as long as you're still fighting, you haven't lost yet. Imagine working day and night on something, putting in all your effort, only to fail not once, not twice, but over 10,000 times. Most people would give up after a few failures. They would say, "Maybe this isn't for me." But Thomas Edison wasn't like most people. Edison was obsessed with one dream: creating the electric light bulb. In the 1800s, people relied on candles and gas lamps. The idea of a long-lasting electric light seemed impossible. Scientists, investors, and even his own friends told him to give up. But he refused. Every experiment he tried ended in failure. 1,000 failed attempts. 5,000 failed attempts. 9,000 failed attempts. Yet every time, he learned something new. When a reporter once asked him, "How does it feel to fail 10,000 times?" Edison simply smiled and said, "I have not failed 10,000 times. I have successfully found 10,000 ways that won't work." And then, after years of failures, he finally succeeded. He invented the first long-lasting electric light bulb, changing the world forever. But what if Edison had given up at attempt number 100? Or 500? Or 9,999? The world would have remained in darkness for years. Edison's story proves that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. Every failure is a step forward, a lesson learned. The only real failure is giving up. So the next time you fail at something, don't see it as the end. Instead, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Keep going, keep pushing, because success belongs to those who refuse to quit. There was a time when J.K. Rowling had nothing. No money, no job, and no hope. She was a single mother, struggling to raise her daughter, living on government welfare. She could barely afford to eat, let alone dream of success. But there was one thing that kept her going, her love for writing. Every night, after putting her daughter to sleep, she would sit in a cafe and pour her heart into a story about a young boy named Harry Potter. When she finished her book, she believed it was something special. So, she sent it to publishers, hoping someone would believe in her story. But rejection after rejection came. One publisher rejected her. Then another. Then another. 12 publishers rejected her manuscript, saying that her story wasn't good enough or marketable. Any normal person would have given up. But not J.K. Rowling. Finally, a small publishing house, Bloomsbury, decided to take a chance on her. But even they weren't convinced. They told her, "Don't expect to make much money from this. Children's books don't sell well." But within a few years, Harry Potter became the best-selling book series in history, selling over 500 million copies worldwide. J.K. Rowling went from being a struggling single mother to a billionaire author. J.K. Rowling's story teaches us that rejection is not the end. It's just a step on the journey to success. If she had given up after the first rejection, or the second, or the 12th, the world would have never known Harry Potter. But she believed in herself, even when no one else did. So the next time someone tells you, "No," or you face failure, don't stop. Because success comes to those who refuse to quit. Imagine being told you will never walk again. Imagine feeling trapped, unable to move, while the world moves on without you. Most people would accept their fate. But Glenn Cunningham was not like most people. In 1917, when Glenn was just 8 years old, a terrible accident changed his life. His schoolhouse caught fire, and he was trapped in the flames. By the time they pulled him out, his legs were severely burned, and the doctors told his parents, "He will never walk again. It's better to accept it now." Glenn heard those words, but he refused to believe them. He decided that no matter what, he would walk again. At first, he couldn't even move his legs. But every day, he forced himself to try. He fell, he failed, he cried in pain, but he never quit. His mother would massage his legs, and he would drag himself across the floor, determined to fight his fate. Months passed, and one day he stood up. His legs were weak, but his spirit was stronger. He kept pushing, and eventually he started walking. But he didn't stop there. He didn't just want to walk, he wanted to run. Years later, the same boy who was told he would never walk became one of the fastest runners in the world. He broke records and even competed in the Olympics, becoming one of the greatest American middle-distance runners in history. Glenn's story teaches us that the limits people place on you don't matter, only your belief in yourself does. Doctors told him he would never walk again. But he proved them wrong. People will tell you that you can't do something. They will doubt you. But their words don't define you, your actions do. So when life knocks you down, get up. No matter how hard it is, no matter how impossible it seems, you must get through this. Because the only person who can truly stop you is you. Imagine dedicating your entire life to something, only to lose the very ability needed to do it. Imagine being a musician, but going completely deaf. Most people would give up. But not Beethoven. Ludwig van Beethoven was one of the greatest composers in history. From a young age, he showed incredible talent in playing the piano and composing music. But at the age of 26, he began to notice something terrifying. His hearing was fading. Doctors told him the unthinkable. He would soon go completely deaf. For a musician, this was the worst possible nightmare. Music was his life. How could he compose if he couldn't hear? At first, Beethoven was devastated. He even considered ending his life. But then, he made a decision. He would not let deafness stop him. Even as his hearing got worse, he kept composing. He started feeling the vibrations of the piano through the floor. He cut the legs off his piano so he could press his ear against it, and sensed the music through vibrations. He refused to accept defeat. And then, at the peak of his deafness, he created his greatest masterpiece, Symphony No. 9. He conducted the performance, but he couldn't hear the audience's applause. People were crying, cheering, celebrating his genius. But he didn't hear a single sound. Yet, today, his music lives on, inspiring millions across the world. He didn't let his greatest obstacle stop him. Instead, he turned his struggle into his strength. Beethoven's story teaches us that no excuse is big enough to stop you if your will is strong enough. He could have given up. He could have said, "I can't do this anymore." But instead, he found a way. And that's what winners do. So when life throws challenges at you, when things seem impossible, remember Beethoven. You have the power to rise above your struggles and create something legendary. Because in the end, it's not about what life takes away from you. It's about what you do with what you have. Life is not easy. It never has been, and it never will be. There will be challenges, failures, rejections, and moments when you feel like giving up. But the truth is, every great success story begins with struggle. Every person who has ever achieved something great has faced moments of doubt, pain, and hardship. But what separates winners from quitters is persistence. Think about Bethany Hamilton. She could have given up after losing her arm, but she fought back and became a champion. Think about Chris Gardner. He could have let homelessness define him, but he refused to quit and became a millionaire. Think about Thomas Edison. He failed 10,000 times, but instead of giving up, he kept going until he invented the light bulb. Think about J.K. Rowling, rejected 12 times, but she believed in herself and created Harry Potter. Think about Glenn Cunningham, told he would never walk again, yet he became an Olympic runner. Think about Beethoven. He lost his hearing, but he still created some of the greatest music in history. These stories are proof that nothing is impossible if you refuse to give up. Your journey might be difficult. You might be facing failures, rejection, or even heartbreak. But this is not the end. Every difficulty you face is just another step toward your success. Every failure is a lesson. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. So when life gets tough, when the road seems impossible, remember this. Backhand index pointing right, you must get through this. Because if you keep pushing, if you refuse to quit, one day, you will look back and realize that every struggle, every tear, and every sleepless night was worth it. Success is waiting for you. Just don't stop moving forward.